The Atlanta Hawks reportedly trade number one overall pick just 2 years ago, Zachary Reese-Shea, the first overall pick in the 2024 draft, is reportedly heading to Dallas after 2 seasons in Atlanta. And this isn't a simple one-for-one trade swap either. It's reported that it's a 3-team deal involving the Hawks, the Mavericks, and the Thunder. Before we get into it, one important note, the deal has been reported and agreed to go, but it's still pending in league approval. So it's not official yet. Nothing's official. With that being said, let's break down the trade. What it means for all 3 teams and why Atlanta's moving from former number 1 picks so quick. I think that's a pretty big story. But without further ado, this is the Relly Report. Here's the reported trade. Atlanta is getting Lou Dort from OKC and Ryan Nembhard from Dallas. Dallas receives Zach. OKC receives 3 second-round picks and create a trade exception. Unfortunately, they do lose Lou Dort, but there's just no money to go around. So they just take draft compensation instead. The exact pick details are still being reported. They haven't said exactly what those picks are yet, but the current reporting says that Oklahoma City will receive Chicago's 2027 second-round pick through Dallas, plus Atlanta's most favorable second-round picks in 2031 and 2032. Again, those exact years and protections haven't been officially confirmed, but those are what rumors are. But honestly, those picks aren't the biggest story here in this trade, in my opinion. I think the biggest story here is obviously Zachary Reese-Shea. Literally only 2 years in Atlanta, was a number 1 overall pick in a weak draft, but I feel like he was not promising for a number 1 pick, but because he's a big wing, there's always potential there. He averaged around 12 points per game, showed flashes as a shooter and a scorer, and finished second in Rookie of the Year behind Stephon Castle, literally 2 years ago, like I already said. For the 19-year-old rookie, there was real foundation to build on, but in second season, it did go in a complete opposite direction. His scoring dropped, I believe, under 10 points a game, and his role got a lot smaller, and by playoff time, he was completely out of the rotation and lost in 7 games in the first round. Now, it's not a complete disaster as of yet, but him being a former number 1 pick, it's definitely a super disappointing sophomore slump for Zach. But instead of giving him a 3rd season, Atlanta just said, nope, we're done here. We're going to move him. We don't want to pay him in 2 years. So they traded him, which is pretty crazy, honestly, if you ask me. I thought they would at least give it maybe 1 more year. But no, they were all set. They said this is going to be bad money soon, so they just got rid of that contract. And we're not talking about a player that spent 4 or 5 years with a team and never developed. Like, he's literally 21 years of age, so he still has a lot of time to develop in this league. And he showed promise. He's had moments as a rookie. I understand he struggled in year 2, but 2 seasons is a really short amount of time to make a real financial decision 2 years ahead, in my opinion. Definitely on a young player who I feel as though who has potential. I know you can't just, go everything off potential, but he has a good contract. And because the potential is there, like if he's able to be serviceable, then that's something that could be really helpful. Like I said, I think 2 years is an extremely short amount of time to make a financial decision on such a young player, especially one that you drafted with the 1st overall pick. Now, I understand what Atlanta's trying to do. I don't necessarily agree with it. But Lou Dort gives them something, they can trust right now. Expiring contract, so they can make bigger moves in the future. He's super physical, experienced, and he's one of the better perimeter defenders we have in the league. I know a lot of people don't like Lou Dort and says he's dirty and he fouls a lot, but he is a great defender. All defense in the 24-25 season. I think that's 1st team as well. Putting him next to Dyson Daniels and would give Atlanta a nasty defensive group on the perimeter. Jalen Johnson is a good defender as well. So this is a lot of size, pressure, toughness, and versatility at the wing spot. Dort is also on an expiring deal, like I said, for about $17 million. So they're not looking to lock itself in another long-term contract, I would assume. I'm assuming they get off this money next season, or maybe they sign a shorter deal for cheaper. But I still think the Hawks are taking the biggest risk in this trade, because if Reese-Shea becomes a player Atlanta thought he could be when they drafted him number 1, it's going to look terrible in their future because they really traded him for nothing. A disappointing sophomore season does not automatically mean a player is a bust. Sometimes his role changes, sometimes the fit's bad, sometimes a young player loses his confidence, and sometimes his development just takes longer than 2 years. Like, that's very, very normal, especially in today's NBA. Atlanta is selling at the exact amount when Reese-Shea's value was probably at its lowest as well, which is terrible. It feels like they're getting like 10 cents on the dollar, and they are not only get on Sachet, according to the report, they're also sending future picks as well. So while Dort makes their defensive floor better short term, at least for right now, they still just gave up way too early on an asset that might have, a gold mine at the end of it. But let's talk about Dallas for a second, because I think the Mavericks may have gotten the best value in this entire deal. Now, if you think about it here, Dallas, you lose Nembhard, but you get Kyrie back and you give up a second-round pick. I think that's a really, really good trade for a wing that was just drafted #1 overall 2 years ago. I know Dallas right now has a lot of wings. They have a lot of wing players, and Sachet is going to need real minutes, real patience for his development to really follow through. You can't just trade for a guy then bury him on the bench. So I really hope that they find time for him this year. But I love this gamble for Dallas. You get cheaper. You kind of just help and bring more support for Coop, it seems like. So I love this. I love this. If Sachet becomes something solid at the wing spot next to Coop, man, they're going to win this trade in a couple of years. And it could look really, really good. Or it could just be a really bad gamble. Who knows? But if I was OKC, I honestly think this does make them worse, but it's just a financial trade that you have to do in the second apron. I don't know if you guys saw my most recent video. I made a video on the second apron. Definitely go check it out. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. And the Thunder won the championship in 2025 with Dort and their young stars. They got to get paid. It's time for them to get more money, and the second apron can seriously restrict that, as we all know. The recent salary clearing moves are really just designed to get under that second apron. As you know, multiple penalties can occur if you're over that hard cap multiple years. But it's not the end of the world for OKC, because they still have defenders like Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso. They still have Jalen Williams. They still have Chet. Still have, obviously, MVP Shea. So they still have one of the most deep teams in the NBA and one of the most talented teams in the NBA. You add more draft capital, which feels like they just have a gold mine of it and never runs out. From a pure basketball standpoint, you don't love the return. 3 second-round picks feels very light for a all-defensive defender like Lou Dort. I feel like he's proven to be really physical, make matchups annoying for the other team's best player. I know OKC just lost to San Antonio in the Western Conference Finals, and his numbers weren't the best, and sometimes he even felt a little unplayable. But him being there at that option on the bench is just so much more valuable than him not being there for some future second rounders in 5 to 4 years. So my final verdict, I think Dallas is the biggest winner as of today. I think they're taking a low-cost swing on a 21-year-old who was just a #1 pick 2 years ago, and the upside is just way better for what they paid for. I think OKC made an understandable financial situation. They're in a substantial financial situation, but they made a great financial decision short term. With 3 picks coming in, no more salary coming in, and they get that trade exception. But it's still, team standpoint, it's a weak return for them. I'm not gonna lie. And Atlanta, obviously, just clearly the most nervous about here, because they got pretty much, it feels like, nothing for a guy that they gave up on very, very early and maybe didn't develop right. So Dort can absolutely step up right now, but he's got to get paid. Nembhard is not just a throw-in. I don't want to disrespect Nembhard because he is a good player, but what's realistically his timeline here in Atlanta, we're not really sure. But trading a former #1 pick in 2 seasons, I think, is a little ridiculous, but you never know. Let's see if it pays off for them. I feel as though this is one of those trades where everyone's going to be on one side early on, but it could completely flip in 2, 3, 4 years. You never know. Like I said, I choose Dallas long term. Short term, I still take Dallas, honestly, getting Sachet. So I think they're the overall winners of this trade here. And hopefully they get to develop Sachet immediately. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's the Relay Report, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.